You think you're free, but your silence is a prison, your smile, a mask, and the peace you show to the world, it's just the perfect disguise for a war you've been losing with yourself. There's a part of you you've buried so deep, even you forgot it exists. The part that screams in your dreams, gets triggered in random conversations, and sabotages every good thing that enters your life. Carl Jung called this the shadow, and he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You'll never be free until you face it. And in this video, we're going to find that shadow. We will expose it, and maybe, for the first time, set you free. You've spent years building a version of yourself you thought the world would accept. A version that's agreeable, productive, responsible, maybe even successful. But deep down, you know it's not the full story. Something's off. You don't feel real. You don't feel free. You smile when you're breaking. You say, I'm fine, when you're anything but. You work hard, stay busy, tick boxes, and yet there's this emptiness you can't outrun. Why? Because you've confused performance with identity. You've mistaken survival strategies for your personality. At some point, you stopped being you and started being who you needed to be for approval, love, safety. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you do that when your entire life has been shaped around who you had to be? It starts early. Maybe you were the peacekeeper in a chaotic home, or the achiever who believed worth was something to earn, or the quiet one who learned to disappear just to feel safe. These roles weren't choices, they were adaptations. And now, as an adult, those roles have hardened into a self-image. You think it's you, but it's not. It's the lie you've been living. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because deep down, your real self is tired of playing a role. Your soul rebels against a life that doesn't reflect who you actually are. And that's the trap. You keep chasing freedom, but you're doing it through a false identity. So no matter what you achieve, you still feel caged because the mask is still on. Real freedom doesn't come from changing your habits. It comes from questioning the version of you that's wearing them. You can't change what you refuse to confront. And until you confront the lie, you'll keep living it. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But you're not here to avoid, you're here to face it. And in the next part, that's exactly what we'll do. We'll peel back the mask and meet the parts of you that never stopped screaming. We all have a version of ourselves we don't want to see. The part that gets jealous, the part that lashes out, the part that still aches over things we pretend we're over. Carl Jung called this the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it lives in darkness. Not physical darkness, but psychological repression. It's everything you were told not to be, everything you had to hide to feel worthy of love. So you buried it, you pushed it down so you could be good. You smiled through pain, performed perfection, and denied your anger, your grief, your raw, unfiltered truth. But here's the paradox. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It festers, it leaks, it becomes you, in disguise. You tell yourself you're calm, but you're secretly resentful. You tell yourself you're independent, but you're terrified of abandonment. You tell yourself you're kind, but you rage in silence at the weight you're always carrying. And the more you run from the shadow, the more power it has over you. It shows up in your relationships, in your impulsive choices, in your self-sabotage. This is why you keep repeating patterns you swore you'd outgrow. Because your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your forgotten self, begging to be seen. As Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts you've abandoned. That anger, it protected you. That sadness, it taught you depth. That jealousy, it revealed your unmet needs. The shadow is full of clues, buried truths that once acknowledged become your greatest power. But you won't access that power by staying comfortable. You access it by turning inward, by asking, what part of me have I silenced to survive? And what would it feel like to finally let it speak? You think you're scared of what you'll find, but what you're really scared of is how powerful you'll become when you stop hiding from yourself. You just met the part of you you've spent years avoiding, but now it's time to see how that part still controls you. In the next part, we'll explore the invisible architecture of your life, the patterns, triggers, and silent contracts that have shaped the way you love, leave, and live, and most of all, why breaking them feels like betrayal. But once you've seen the shadow, you can't unsee it, and that's where most people stop, because awareness hurts. It's easier to go back to the loop, to blame your ex, your childhood, your boss, the algorithm, the universe, to say, this is just how I am, instead of asking, why am I still stuck in this same cycle? Again, because here's the truth, most healing content won't tell you. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are unwilling to face. You keep chasing emotionally unavailable people. Maybe love was something you had to earn. You keep sabotaging opportunities. Maybe success feels unsafe because failure is familiar. You keep playing the peacemaker, always putting others first. Maybe being needed was your only way to feel valuable. These aren't flaws, they're survival codes. You didn't choose these patterns. They were wired into you when you were too young to know better. But now you know. And if you still keep living by those scripts, that's no longer trauma, that's self-abandonment. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The moment you become aware of a pattern, you're holding the key, but most people hand it right back because freedom feels terrifying when all you've ever known is the cage. The cage gives you rules, it gives you expectations, it gives you an identity, but it also gives you suffering, quiet, persistent, suffocating suffering, and eventually that suffering becomes your comfort zone. So here's the question, how long are you willing to be loyal to a version of yourself that's killing your potential? Because until you break the pattern, you are the pattern. And if you think breaking it will feel like clarity and courage, you're wrong. It will feel like grief, like confusion, like standing in the middle of a burning house and realizing you lit the match. But what comes after that? That's where the breakthrough begins. Here's the part no one prepares you for. Healing doesn't feel like becoming a warrior. It feels like falling apart in slow motion. You won't wake up one day with all the answers. You'll wake up in tears, grieving a version of yourself you can no longer pretend to be. Because real transformation isn't Instagrammable. It doesn't happen on a yoga mat or during a sound bath or through a carefully curated morning routine. It happens when you're face down on the floor, finally honest with yourself. Not the kind of honesty that says, I should journal more. The kind that whispers, I've been running from myself for years, and I'm tired. You'll start to notice the space between the trigger and the reaction. You'll feel the urge to lash out and pause instead. You'll feel the need to people please, but choose yourself instead. You'll feel the fear rise, yet walk into it anyway. That space, that tiny pause, is the birthplace of freedom. But it won't feel like power at first. It'll feel like a loss, because choosing differently means letting go of the stories that once made you feel safe. Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain, and that pain, it's sacred, because through that pain, you realize something you never expected. You were never broken. You were just buried, under conditioning, expectations, roles, trauma, under noise. And in the silence that remains, you begin to hear something faint, something you haven't heard in years. Yourself, your real self, the one you left behind, the one who didn't need validation, the one who wasn't afraid to be seen, the one who knew who they were. But here's the twist, that version of you, they're still waiting, waiting for you to stop betraying them, waiting for you to stop playing small, waiting for you to finally come home. And in the next part, we're going to meet that self, not the version you've been performing, but the one you've been suppressing your whole life, because that is where your freedom begins. Let's talk about the part of you no one else remembers but you do. Not with your mind, but with a feeling you can't explain. A quiet ache, a dull restlessness, like something's missing, but you don't know what. That feeling? It's you, the real you, the one you buried to survive. You didn't abandon yourself because you were weak. You did it because you were smart, because life taught you early that being real was dangerous, that being emotional meant being dramatic, that being expressive meant being too much. So, piece by piece, you started amputating parts of yourself just to be accepted. Your creativity, too weird. Your anger, too loud. Your needs, too needy. So you put on a smile, you played the role, you followed the script, and people loved you for it. But you started disappearing. That's what self-abandonment really is. Not a moment, but a slow erosion of your soul. You became who the world needed you to be, and in the process, forgot who you needed you to be. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes with a cost. It means digging up everything you buried, the rage, the shame, the dreams you gave up on, the truth you silenced. It means becoming the villain in someone else's story to become the hero in your own. And yes, it's going to hurt, but the pain of becoming is nothing compared to the pain of remaining a stranger to yourself. So here's the question you've been avoiding. What would your life look like if you stopped running? What would happen if you stopped editing yourself, fit into rooms that don't feel like home? What if the version of you you're afraid to become is actually the version you were born to be? In the final part, we're going to bring this all together, the fear, the pain, the truth, and ask one simple question. What would your life become if you finally stopped hiding? You've spent your whole life trying to fix yourself, when maybe you were never broken, just buried under expectations, buried under shame, buried under the lies you had to believe just to make it through. But here's the truth. You don't find your freedom in becoming someone better. You find it in becoming someone real. You don't have to be healed to be whole. You don't have to be fearless to be free. You just have to stop lying to yourself, because you already know what's keeping you stuck. You already know what you're avoiding. And you already know who you were before the world told you who to be. The question is, will you finally choose you? Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Stop dreaming of a better life. Start awakening to the one that's been waiting for you beneath the rubble. You'll never be free until you face what you've been running from. And the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing. Your subscription truly means a lot to me. It's not just a number. It's a reminder that these words are reaching someone who's searching for truth, healing, and depth, just like I am. Every time you subscribe, it motivates me to dig deeper, to create something better, to keep showing up with content that matters, content that might just make a difference. So thank you for being here. And if you're ready, hit subscribe and let's walk this path together.